At the end of the last election, I've said on more than one occasion that this primary season will be somewhat of a war, and that war started on the day or that the last vote was cast in the last congressional election, especially from the standpoint of the left. Whereas the right, for the most part, has Donald Trump in, and I don't necessarily think anybody's going to primary Donald Trump. There are all sorts of vultures fighting for, let's say, a certain degree of supremacy on the left, especially in the standpoint of the political space. Now, this is going to probably get more intense as people start to declare themselves in the race, but they've been attacks on Sanders, and of course there have been people who are supportive of Sanders who have said things about certain people, let's say like Beto. The wild part about this is, I'm going to give you an article written by Jonathan Chait. This article is silly at best. Some parts I agree with the article, but he's looking for the universe in a teacup, missing the point that it's just the teacup. If he wanted to understand the left on this standpoint, he should have just asked. The fact of the matter is, this entire article could be summed up in like 4 lines, but Jonathan Chait peers into reality in order to plumb the depths of this thing. Bernie Sanders supporters are distrustful of Beto because Beto is a blank slate, and ultimately Sanders supporters have a list of policy objectives that they want to get accomplished. They have a very clear list of basic policy objectives that they want to get accomplished. And so if you have a list of things that you want to get accomplished, and one of those guys is not necessarily going to be pushing for that list of things, then yes, they are right to be suspicious of that particular guy, especially if he's trying to wear the cloak of somebody who may get those things accomplished. That's the whole thing. There's no magic to that. That's pretty straightforward. That's not a cult or personality or anything else. That is basic politics. This guy is not going to push forward the things that I want. I want to make that very clear. Fact of the matter is, David Sirota, just noting that Beto has taken a god-awful amount of money from the oil industry, and at a time where they're telling us we have 12 years left, should that be concerning, particularly if he's going to be dealing with legislation over issues of climate. And oh my God, he's being attacked. Oh my God, he's being attacked. If your record is so bad that the very act of stating it cause people to believe that it's attacked, maybe you need to have a different record. Just saying. But let's go through this article. This is a silly article. Let's flip over. Why the Bernie movement must crush Beto O'Rourke. Because that's what's taking place. Stating your record and questioning your record is trying to crush Beto O'Rourke. That's amazing. The first skirmish of the 2020 Democratic primary, a wave of attacks on Beto O'Rourke. Again, stating his record is considered an attack. Hey, you took all of this money from oil. How dare you state that I've taken all of this money for oil? You're attacking me, sir, by stating the shit that I've done. Bastards. On the outside, it looks like one of those inscrutable personality-driven online spats that characterize the Twitter era. But the feud is neither petty, nor personal, nor irrational. It is the first shot in a war that may well continue for the next year and a half. Alright, sounds a little bit epic, but okay, explain. So that's right here. But my aim in this article is not to persuade the reader of the merits of my preference, but instead to provide a descriptive account of an important conflict that I believe is going to be widely misunderstood. Indeed, I think the online warriors of the Bernie movement are getting too little credit, and their mainstream liberal antagonists will benefit from a better understanding of their motives and thinking. And Jonathan Chait is just the guy that's going to give it to us. Just the guy that's going to give it to us. Let's keep going. He's weaving a conspiracy theory. Let's go into this conspiracy. The Sanders partisans, Sanders partisans, that's awesome, who are attacking O'Rourke, like Zalid Jilani, David Sirota, Again, stating an individual's record is all of a sudden an attack. If stating your record is an attack, maybe you should have a different record. Again, the entire premise of this is somewhat lunacy. If you, as an individual, have certain things that you want the government to accomplish, let's say Medicare for all. Just say pick one thing out of a hat, Medicare for all. And the guy who's running opposing you is not for Medicare for all, then how is that? I mean, that's essentially one guy supports our interests and the other guy doesn't. He's trying to make it some epic conspiracy theory. But let's keep going. Alright, the distinction is the key to deciphering the whole episode. Sanders attracts the intense support of a small left-wing intellectual vanguard who sees American politics in fundamentally different terms than most Democrats. The primary struggle in American politics, as they see it, is not between liberalism and conservatism, but between socialism and capitalism. Now, here's the thing. I partially agree with that, to a certain degree. It's not necessarily socialism, though, that Sanders is pushing. Sanders has said on more than one occasion that what he's talking about is a country like Denmark or Sweden or something. That's still capitalism. That's just less rapacious capitalism. Let's be very clear. Sanders fashions himself as more of an FDR Democrat, regardless of calling himself a democratic socialist. That's not socialism. I mean, FDR's big thing was that he saved capitalism. I guess that's what, yes, you may say you're a democratic socialist colloquially, but what Sanders often talks about is only old deal Democrat stuff or New Deal Democrat stuff. So that's what I'm saying, yes-ish. It depends on what degree of the left that you're talking about. But if you're talking about Sanders, and by the way, selling out stadiums, like you're talking about a situation where tens of thousands of people are coming to see you speak. That's not a small body of an intellectual thing. That is crowds. That is movement. That's a movement. I mean, after all, right here. Let's not be diminutive. Sanders' wing of the party terrifies moderate Democrats. Here's how they plan to stop it. They actually had a meeting in order to attack Sanders supporters. But whatever. Let's keep going. He thinks it's a small body of people, even though there are tens of thousands of people showing up at the stadiums. Hillary Clinton couldn't fill an outhouse, but Sanders is filling stadiums. And Trump is too. Fair enough. I guess my point is it's not just a small body. It is often the policies that Sanders is pushing, by the way, is in the middle of the country. Like, when you make this argument for Medicare for all, but 70% of the population is on for that. Expansion of Social Security, the majority of the public is on for that. Education, again, the majority of the public is on for that. These are mainstream issues. It is the party itself that is out of alignment. Even though the language that's being used is pragmatism, practicality, that type of stuff. It is the party itself that's out of alignment. They lost to knuckle draggers. And he's here bitching about Sanders. But okay, fair enough. I give him points on this. Sanders labels himself as a socialist and frames his rhetoric in Marxian class terms, which sets him apart from Democrats. That is true. To some degree. I mean, he's not, again, what Sanders talks about from the standpoint of politics, he's not talking about nationalizing railways or any of that stuff. He's just talking about FDR politics. That's just Democrats. Even a progressive like Elizabeth Warren calls herself a capitalist to my bones. Socialists, at least, those who aren't willing to settle for incremental advances traditionally held out by liberal Democrats as the only option, see Sanders' presidential candidacy as uniquely compelling. Yes, that's true, but I don't think that makes the point that you think you're making here. Sanders labels himself a socialist, yes, whatever, right here. At least those who aren't willing to settle for incremental advances traditionally held out by liberal Democrats as their only option. See Sanders' presidential candidacy as uniquely compelling. Yes. Getting things accomplished is a uniquely compelling thing. That's why they have 10,000 people coming up to those stadiums. That's why you have crowds all across the United States considering the guy's the most popular politician. That's why. That's why. I mean, let's be clear about that. This idea of incrementalism as this kind of prized thing, that's not something to be proud of. The incrementalism thing. When you get the opportunity to do big things, you do big things. I don't think that makes the point that he thinks he makes. But let's keep going. I guess my point is, yes, when you get to the point of saying we as a community, as a country, can do big things. We can have Medicare for all. We can expand education benefits, expansion of Social Security. We've done those things in the past. We can do those things again. This guy is raising incrementalism as if it's this proud moment. I propose to you that the indistinguishability between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is part and parcel why you lose so much. This incrementalism nonsense is purely relative to the other party. This is to some degree why you continuously lose. You can't show your successes. The voters who pulled the lever for Sanders, by contrast, are ideologically indistinguishable from the rest of the party. Right here, makes the point even clearer. Among the minority of voters who identify as very liberal, the most left-wing choice, Sanders and Clinton perform about equally. In 2016, Sanders voters actually had more conservative views on economic inequality and changes to Social Security and Medicare than voters did. Because, understand this, that's true, but again, I don't think that makes the point that he thinks it makes. The majority of Democrats for Medicare for all, and when you take out the rest of the population, you just talk about Democrats. Medicare for all, education, these guys are far to the left of what the party itself is. So yeah, if you look down the lever and you say, okay, how many of these people are in the same camp as Clinton? That's true, but that's only because they don't get the option of Sanders. Meaning they're on board for the stuff that Sanders is talking about. And yeah, they may vote also for Hillary Clinton, but the difference in this is if they were given the option of Sanders that would push those particular policies, they would take the pushing of those policies. I hope that makes the point clear. In the same way that the majority of the population is on board for a lot of the policy Sanders pushes, the Democratic Party itself, being the left-leaning party, the people who are in that party tend to be harder on that scale and higher on that scale in regards to the things that they want the party to push. He's making a point, but I think he's missing that point. That Sanders is not this radical in a sense. From the standpoint of what the public wants, from the standpoint of what that party wants, he's in the center. He's right on board. So I guess that's my point. Right here. Sanders built most of his support, and here's another nonsense point. Sanders built most of his support on personal contrasts rather than ideology. That is nonsense. That is utter nonsense. Sanders goes on the stage and for an hour, he talks about healthcare, education, expansion of Social Security, pushing back the billionaire class, expanding unions. I would hope he goes into worker co-ops, but policies to pull back income inequality, to support workers. That's what he talks about. That is ideology. Fact of the matter is, there's no way to escape ideology. Anywhere you go, there you are. The idea that Sanders wants Medicare for all is an ideological choice, in the same way that Beto doesn't want it is an ideological choice. So at the very least, Beto's not going to do anything for it. I guess there's no way to escape that. The people who were backing Sanders was doing so not because they thought he had a cool persona. It was because of the things that was coming out of his mouth. You didn't get 10,000 people showing up at a stadium just because they liked the guy's t-shirt. It was what was coming out of his mouth. This is a nonsense line. You should be embarrassed that you wrote this line, because that line doesn't make any sense. Sanders built most of his support on personal contrast rather than ideology. No, it was ideology. Just saying. $15 minimum wage. I would imagine at some point Sanders would get to the point of having workers having percentage of the company, whatever, or worker co-ops, supporting worker co-ops. I guess I'm making the point that his support was purely ideological. you could make a better case that the support for Clinton was more about personal traits, because Clinton was just somebody they knew. And I'm telling you this from my own experiences. You could have a conversation with somebody and you say, why are you supporting Clinton? More and more of those people supported her just because she was a Democrat, not because they knew anything that she was going to do. But to be fair, the majority of the population votes in those kind of terms. But nobody knew who Sanders was. Sanders had 3% support when he started. It was what was coming out of his mouth. It was purely ideological. In fact, calling himself a socialist, if you're going to make this argument that it's between socialists and capitalists, even early on in this, you say from Sanders' standpoint, he's a socialist, which is an ideological position. Meaning, to say that his support was contrast rather than ideology, but above you kind of agree that it's ideology just because you call him a socialist and say he's socialist versus capitalist. You're trying too hard, dude. That's all I'm saying. You're trying too hard. This has everything to do with Beto not supporting the things that Sanders supporters want supported. That's it. With this wolf in sheep's clothing that he's a blank slate. Now, if you want to say that there's some risk here or threat here, yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, but understand what we mean by threat. It just means that there have been people who are willing to support him, not because of the policy positions, but purely because of him being a blank slate that can raise a ton of money. Dwight Obama. So, just saying, he's finding far too much into nothing. All right, so right here. And while O'Rourke has yet to decide on the presidential campaign and would have to overcome enormous field if he does, the Sandinistas, oh, I love that. Sandinistas, like Nicaragua, hardly paranoid to discern the kind of groundswell that could quickly propel O'Rourke to the front of the pack. Former Obama strategist and current Pod Save America host Dan Pfeiffer wrote a piece urging O'Rourke to run without endorsing him. O'Rourke reportedly met with Obama, who favored him with public praise. What I liked the most about the race is that it didn't feel constant poll tested, Obama said. It felt as if he based his statements on positions and what he believed. He was a blank slate. He was a blank slate. So right here. O'Rourke's short career has allowed him to avoid being pinned down on every item in the platform. He generally occupies the center of the Democratic Party and often expresses broad sympathy for the left-wing policy goals while suggesting he favors a more pragmatic alternative. I love that. I love that. It's totally pragmatic to be an incrementalist and lose to Donald Trump and a bunch of other knuckle draggers. That's great. You lose 1,100 seats. But you're the pragmatic ones. That's insane. On healthcare, right here, this is kind of my point. All of this boils down to who Beto is not. It's not a personality thing. It has everything to do with what do you want to accomplish in that office? And will the individual that you put into that office accomplish those objectives? On healthcare, Medicare for all, here's my litmus test, just right off the bat. And this is him saying it. He generally occupies the center of the Democratic Party and often expresses broad sympathy for the left. Okay, that means nothing to me. On healthcare, he advocates achieving universal healthcare coverage, whether it be through a single-payer system, a dual system, or otherwise. He's occupying every position at once. He's like a superposition of a particle. So that we can ensure that everyone is able to see a provider when it would do demo. That means nothing. That means nothing. This is essentially him saying, I am for pretty much everything. Whatever works. Yeah, but what are you for? What are you for? Saying that you're for everything. Are you for Medicare for all? Yes or no? That answer would be no. So if one of my issues is Medicare for all, and I just read your article that says that Beto, for the most part, is not for Medicare for all, why the hell am I supporting Beto? And that has nothing to do with Bernie Sanders at all. It has everything to do with what Beto doesn't represent. I hope that's clear. This article is nonsensical in some of its premises. Right here. One of the deeper strategic goals of the left is to equate progressive maximalism with authenticity. No, not at all. No, people aren't necessarily looking for, the absolute of what a lefty is. I don't even know what that is. But certain policy objectives, yes. Certain policy objectives, absolutely. They want candidates who take uncompromising left-wing positions to be seen as authentic, and candidates who adopt more moderate lines to be calculating phony. Well, it depends. If you're taking money from a particular industry and you just so happen to seem to lean in the direction of the industry, then yeah, I'm going to find something suspicious with that. The fact of the matter is, corruption needs to be one of those things that we hit head on. We need to get rid of this idea that companies or people with means can invest large sums of money into races, essentially buying elections, pulling the political strings in a particular direction using their cash. Cash is not speech, I'm sorry. Cash is a physical object. Well, it's a conceptual object, but the money itself, the greenbacks, are conceptual. Besides the point, and I don't want to go off the rails. So, let's see. Let's calculate it again. It depends. I mean, look, Sanders does have a quality of him that seems authentic. But that's more of a, the public looks at him and sees him authentic because he's had the same positions for the past 40 years. So right here. O'Rourke's burgeoning image as the next Obama, I've called him White Obama myself, is a reason socialists reject him. I think that they're suspicious of Beto because he's taken oil and gas money. He's becoming a darling of big donors and Obama likes him, says historian Michael Kazan. Beto is a lot like Obama. True, writes Bruning, it's perhaps time for left-leaning Democrats to realize that they may not be a good thing. Of course, given the 95% of Democrats' approval of Obama, the message has fairly limited utility of a line of attack. Look, I think the left, or me, when I hit him as being White Obama, I hit him from the standpoint of lefties had this fascination for Obama for the first few years, thinking that he was going to do something. And he gets through his presidency, and you find that he's, essentially a moderate conservative. And while there may be some things that he's done better than, let's say, the Republican that would have been in office, like I think Obamacare is moving the ball incrementally forward, even though it has its problems. It wasn't what people thought, nor did it line up to the rhetoric of hope and change that he pushed for. Just saying. Asking whether or not you want another blank slate that will talk a good game, but will not necessarily do, and essentially uses rhetoric in a way that kind of just negates itself. Is that what you really want? Or do you want somebody who actually knows what they stand for? I don't think that's necessarily an insane thing to ask. But let's keep going. Baffled liberals may still be nursing wounds from the 2016 seat of passion intensity of Bernie's movement as a personality cult. I love that. Propelled by unthinking devotion to him in spite of a party that's believed rigged the primary against them. I think that part is the one that annoys me the most. You look at the new polls for CNN and you find that minorities and everything else support Sanders in magnificent numbers, even more so than whites. That doesn't stop them from still saying that Sanders doesn't get minority support. And in this case, the idea that this is a personality cult. The personality cult, it's ideology. It's not personality. When I went to see Sanders at one of his rallies, and it was in Philadelphia, and it was a love fest. I mean, I didn't necessarily know the people around me, but there was an energy about the place where all of you are resonating, not because of Sanders per se, but because of what's coming out of his mouth. It's somebody who's articulating a certain value set that you have with regards to this kind of, I use the term moral compass on legislation. Humans are more important and more valuable than profits. Full stop. How do we make utility and happiness more for the individual, cutting down on vulnerability being one of those main things for me? Well, one person means it and has pushed that for the past 40 years. The other guy, not so much. It's not... When somebody articulates that, it resonates. It's not the individual per se, it's what's coming out the individual's mouth. I guess I'm trying to make that point very clear. From an outside looking in, they may think it's a personality cult, but it's not. It's this particular person is articulating something that is resonating within me, and in such, get support. If he stopped articulating that, he would stop getting that support. When Bernie Sanders tried to get people to vote for Hillary Clinton and his own crowd booed him for over a minute, just saying that support can be pulled away. Unthinking devotion to him is why the socialist left belongs to Sanders simply because there's no other presidential candidates who meets their exacting ideological criteria. They see O'Rourke as a threat to their project because, in important ways, he is. I don't know what project they're talking about. If the project is to try to get your candidate elected, all people who are supporting a particular candidate try to get that candidate elected. So that doesn't mean anything. As for Beto being a threat, I think all of the presidential contenders, with the exception of Cory Booker, are threats. Not to mention the system itself being somewhat of a threat to Sanders getting through it. So again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But now I'll leave it on this. Putting Beto's record up for scrutiny is not an attack. Like, that's somewhat of a nonsense perspective. To say Beto O'Rourke took a bunch of oil money, and somebody says, oh my God, you're attacking Beto O'Rourke by naming the fact that he took a bunch of oil money, or that he took this particular vote in favor of oil and gas, or this particular vote in favor of some kind of finance thing. That is not the same thing as smearing Beto O'Rourke. I just want to make that very clear. And again, the issue here from the standpoint of the left on things of Beto O'Rourke has everything to do with Beto not being believed to push for the same policy objectives as what we want to get accomplished. The entire article, or the entire thing, could have just been boiled down to that. So, this has gone longer than I wanted, but this article annoyed the shit out of me as I was reading this article. I guess you live in a different universe than I do. Oh God, we all have power. There's no left in American politics. It was driven to extinction long ago. Yeah, if you're talking about, see, I can't say that it's an absolute. Depends on what you mean by the left. We have a neoliberal troll who works for TYT Farm. Beto looks like the lost Bush child, a slimmer Jeb Bush. 2020, let's see this train derail even more. In any case, TYT lied about being unaware of Beto's record. Yeah, they pushed him. Anyone who would want Dorr as a vice president is hilariously dumb. Oh God. I like Jimmy, but I wouldn't want him as VP or writing legislation. I don't know if I want Jimmy writing legislation, but I like him. Jamal, do you have proof you're not a Russian spy? Anyone critical of the Democratic Party is an American. Oh God. Somebody, it's funny, one of my best friends asked me that. He's a Democrat, and he is in the camp for Hillary Clinton. He is fully on the Russian bandwagon, and I was telling him about the show, and he was like, how do you know the Russians aren't funding it? It's like, all right, we don't need to talk anymore. That was the last time I had a conversation with him. I was like, you've lost it. You fucking lost it. I was kidding, I didn't mean it. I know you didn't mean it. Alright, this one is gone for 30 minutes. I didn't think this one was going to go this long, and I was trying to go through it faster, but it didn't accomplish my objective. I have another video that I want to do on Medicare for all. I swear, man, after being in all those countries, trying to process that stuff, it's been difficult to get back into a typical schedule. Like, just functioning is just weird. Not to mention, when I first got back, I had all this weight on, so I had to pull a bunch of fluid, so back-to-back treatments. Um, but one of the key things that comes up for me after being in all those places was the Medicare for all thing. That's a red line issue for me. That is the basic. You get 70% of support of the American public. That is a red line. I don't care if Lucifer himself is on the other line or side of that political debate. If the Democrat is not supporting that, or either party is not supporting that, they don't even get my look. Because you look at what takes place from the standpoint of the United States and other countries, even through the context just of the lens of dialysis treatments. Poland, a treatment was $120, and let's say in Berlin, I think it was like 200 and some change. By the time you get to Amsterdam, it goes to like $450 or some insane amount. In America, it's double that. Like, as expensive as it is in those countries, especially when you're talking about Northern European countries, it is like double that price in the States if somebody was trying to come here in order to get treatments. If you were born in Europe, you will be able to travel all through Europe, not to mention some areas of Africa, free. Because the government itself, meaning as a community, has taken the profit motive, or the entire profit motive, or part of the profit motive, out of it. From the point of sale, as the individuals using it, they don't pay. This vulnerability that each of us has in our lives from the standpoint of healthcare. The majority of the people in this country don't have, $500 in the bank. How much does an emergency room visit cost? How much does a bone break? Just any random thing that could take place. Heart, cancer. The majority of us are vulnerable. And you would think that the majority of us would take an adult decision and say, let's nix that exploitive relationship of the capitalist class getting profit off of our elements and our vulnerabilities. So, I'm not going to keep this long. Is Trump passed Medicare for all Americans? He is surely a Russian, must be impeached. There is no way. America has the dumbest healthcare system on earth. Our system is bizarre. Like, when I first got back into the country, I wasn't sure that I could even get treatments, because at that point I had, you lose contact with your company. Kenya's system is somewhat insane, but that's a country that's impoverished, and that's not the issue of the United States. It's not an impoverished nation. And you see what takes place in other nations. Like in some other countries, they have what they call HDF. It's a higher degree of hemodialysis. From the standpoint of Portugal, if you're born in Portugal, healthcare for you is free. You could be the poorest person in that country and you'll get high quality healthcare. As an evolved society, the society says there are things that we want to take care of, and that's being one of them. The healthcare system, over and over again, I kept getting people saying, why on earth is your system that way? So yeah. Trump flip-flopping on the Syria withdrawal. Is he? I need to check that. Trump flip-flopping. Like I said, I was giving tepid applause, but saving, any kind of real applause until I'm doing it. Progressive voice is pretty young. I bet his kidneys are usable. It would fetch a solid price. Oh, that's funny. It has been full of alcohol and meth. I don't know, man. He needs his kidneys. He needs his kidneys. Yeah, man. I don't know who would sell those. The funny part is, though, they were in Nepal. I remember there were people who were selling organs or getting their organs purchased for them. One of the issues had to do with Indians coming into Nepal and making deals with the Nepalese for kidneys. And, being impoverished, they would say, I'll give you $1,000 for a kidney. Now, sometimes they would give them the money, sometimes they wouldn't. But you would end up with a problem of, well, you've just taken this person's kidney and this person lives on the sweat of their backs. And you've weakened this person from the standpoint of them needing to make a living. And the money itself doesn't necessarily last as long. They were locking people up over this. At least one who sell them. That's funny. Stop paying attention to the words Trump uses. Only focus on the actions. Ignore all of his words. Well, you can't ignore all of his words. He's president of the United States. Problem is Trump lies as easily as breathing. And so it's like you have to take his words with a certain degree of context. Trump would never propose Medicare for all. Yeah, Trump would never propose Medicare for all. I don't believe that either. I don't believe that at all. Andrew Church, progressive voice isn't pro-choice because ladies choose guys whose balls have descended over them. What? Alright, I'm going to end this. Thank you guys for showing up. This one has gone a little bit longer than I wanted. Or than I thought it was going to go, let's say it that way. But if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.